The Santa Ana winds were blowing hot and dry across Los Angeles, kicking up dust and turning the sunset into a bruised haze of purple and orange. From the terrace of the penthouse in downtown LA, Kang Min-ho looked out over the sprawling grid of traffic, the red taillights stretching endlessly like arteries pumping blood through the city. The air conditioning inside was set to a chilling 60 degrees, but Min-ho felt the heat rising in his blood. He held a crystal tumbler of bourbon, not drinking, just watching the ice melt. Behind him, the silence of the room was broken by the sharp, rhythmic tapping of a stylus against a tablet. "The flight from Seoul lands in 4 hours, Min-ho," said Mr. Park, the Kang family's most trusted advisor and currently the bearer of Min-ho's death sentence. "Your father has made it clear. The expansion into the American market requires capital. The Han family has the shipping routes we need. You marry their daughter, Jae-yoon, and the merger is complete. Refuse, and the chairman pulls your funding and your protection. The LAPD will have your files by morning." Min-ho turned, the city lights framing his silhouette. He was impeccably dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than most cars, his posture rigid, his face a mask of dangerous calm. "My father thinks he can trade me like a racehorse to cover his bad investments," Min-ho said, his voice low, carrying the clipped precision of a man who rarely had to repeat himself. "I built this territory. The West Coast operations are mine. If I marry Han Jae-yoon, her father puts his claws into my business within a week. I won't let the Han syndicate dismantle what I've built." Mr. Park sighed, finally looking up. "Then you need a miracle, Min-ho, or a very good reason why you cannot marry her. The chairman respects only 2 things, power and binding contracts. Unless you are already legally bound to another, the engagement stands." Min-ho took a sip of the bourbon, the burn grounding him. He didn't need a miracle. He needed a roadblock, a wife. Specifically, a wife who was so far removed from the Korean underworld that her very existence would insult the Han family enough to make them back out, yet keep his father's hands tied by American law. 10 miles west, in a stiflingly hot studio apartment in North Hollywood, Nia Barnes was lying on the floor, staring at the peeling paint on her ceiling. The oscillating fan in the corner was just pushing hot air around. Her phone buzzed beside her head, another rejection email. "Thank you for auditioning for Urban Crisis, but we've decided to go in a different direction. You have a great look, but we need someone with a more authentic street vibe." Nia groaned and threw the phone across the room onto her pile of laundry. It was the same story every time. Too proper for the gritty roles, too exotic for the girl-next-door roles, always the best friend, never the lead. She was 26, broke, and 3 days away from having her car repossessed. The dream of Hollywood was rapidly turning into a nightmare of unpaid bills and humiliation. She checked the time. 8:00 p.m. She had to get to work. She dragged herself up, splashing cold water on her face to hide the puffiness of her eyes. She worked at the Onyx, an exclusive members-only lounge in West Hollywood that catered to the city's elite, tech billionaires, visiting royalty, and the occasional crime lord trying to wash money through real estate. Nia hated it, but the tips were the only thing keeping a roof over her head. She pulled on her uniform, a sleek, backless black dress that left little to the imagination, and applied her makeup with the precision of a warrior putting on war paint. Tonight, she wasn't Nia the failing actress. She was the hostess, invisible, efficient, and smiling, always smiling. The Onyx was crowded that night, the air thick with the smell of expensive cologne and ambition. Nia moved through the dimly lit room, balancing a tray of martinis. She was assigned to the private mezzanine, a secluded area overlooking the main floor. That was where she saw him. Min-ho was sitting in a circular booth, flanked by 2 bodyguards who looked like they were carved out of granite. He looked bored, dangerously so, tapping his fingers against the leather seat. He wasn't paying attention to the beautiful women trying to catch his eye from the bar. He was staring at the entrance, as if waiting for an enemy to walk through. Nia approached the table, setting down a bottle of insanely expensive champagne. "Compliments of the house, Mr. Kang," she said, her voice a practiced purr. Min-ho didn't look up, but one of the men at the table, a loud American developer named Riker who was trying to close a deal with Min-ho, reached out and grabbed Nia by the waist, pulling her off balance. "Forget the champagne," Riker slurred, his face flushed. "I want to know what's on the dessert menu, sweetheart." The table went quiet. Nia froze. Her instinct was to slap him, but she knew that would get her fired. Instead, she took a breath and slipped into character. She let out a light, airy laugh, gently peeling his fingers off her waist as if it were all a charming game. "I'm afraid I'm not on the menu, sir," she said, winking playfully while stepping out of his reach. "But the chef makes a chocolate souffle that is to die for." Her smile was dazzling, perfect, and completely fake. Min-ho watched the exchange, his interest piqued. He saw the flash of murder in her eyes before the smile plastered over it. He recognized the shift in posture, the way she buried her fear and disgust under a layer of polish. "She's lying," he thought, "and she's good at it." Riker wasn't done. He stood up, swaying. "Don't play hard to get. I know you actresses. You all have a price." He reached for her again, more aggressively this time. Nia braced herself, her smile faltering. Suddenly, a hand slammed onto the table. It wasn't loud, but the sound was heavy, final. Min-ho was looking at Riker with eyes that were cold and dead. "Sit down, Riker," Min-ho said softly. "You are embarrassing yourself, and you are boring me." Riker blinked, the threat in Min-ho's voice piercing through his drunken haze. He sat down immediately. Min-ho turned his gaze to Nia. "You," he said, "sit." He gestured to the empty spot next to him. Nia hesitated. "I can't, sir, I'm working." "I'll buy the club if I have to," Min-ho said, his tone flat. "Sit down." Nia looked at the manager watching from the shadows, who gave her a frantic nod to obey the VIP. She sat, keeping a safe distance. Min-ho studied her. "You're an actress," he stated. It wasn't a question. "I saw you shift characters just now. Who are you when you aren't pretending to like men like him?" Nia straightened her spine, dropping the hostess persona. "I'm a woman who is tired of being grabbed," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming real. "And I'm a woman who needs this job, so if you're going to get me fired, just do it quickly." Min-ho swirled his drink. "I don't want to get you fired, I want to hire you." He leaned in closer, the scent of sandalwood and expensive tobacco surrounding her. "I have a situation, a family matter. I need a wife, and I need her tonight. I need someone who isn't Korean, someone who is clearly an outsider to stop a merger that will ruin me." Nia stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "You're joking." "I never joke about business," Min-ho replied. "I need a performance. A convincing one. We go to the courthouse in the morning. You play the role of the woman who stole my heart, the reason I can't marry the woman my father chose. In exchange, I pay off your debts, all of them, and I give you $500,000 cash when the contract ends in 1 year." Nia felt the room spin. The heat of the LA night seemed to press against the windows. 500,000, it was freedom. It was her own production company. It was never having to serve a drink again. But she looked at Min-ho, the danger radiating off him was palpable. This wasn't a rom-com, this was walking into the lion's den. "And what happens if I mess up my lines?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Min-ho looked at her, and for a second the coldness in his eyes thawed into something like respect. "You won't," he said, "because you're desperate, and desperate people are the best actors." He pulled a contract from his inside jacket pocket. He had been carrying it for days, waiting for the right candidate, but none had sparked his interest until now. He slid it across the table. "You have 5 minutes to decide, Ms. Barnes," she whispered, looking at the paper. "Nia Barnes." She looked at the contract, then at the crowded, suffocating club, and finally at the man who was offering her a golden parachute into a hurricane. She picked up a pen from the table. "I have one condition," she said, meeting his gaze. "I don't stop acting." "My career comes first," Min-ho smirked. "Deal." Nia signed her name. The morning sun over Beverly Hills was blinding, a stark contrast to the shadowy deal made in the dark corners of the Onyx just 12 hours prior. Nia stood on the steps of the courthouse, squinting behind oversized sunglasses that Min-ho had handed her in the car. She felt like an imposter in her own skin, wearing a white sundress that Min-ho's assistant had procured at dawn, simple, elegant, and screaming innocent bride. Beside her, Min-ho adjusted his cuffs, looking as if he were about to acquire a hostile company rather than a life partner. He turned to her, his face unreadable. "Hand," he commanded softly. Nia extended her left hand, expecting a simple band. Instead, Min-ho pulled a velvet box from his pocket and slid a ring onto her finger that was heavy enough to anchor a small boat. It was a flawless, emerald-cut diamond, flanked by smaller stones. It caught the light so aggressively, it almost hurt to look at. "It's too much," Nia whispered, staring at the rock. "It looks like a prop from a heist movie." "It's not jewelry, Nia. It's armor," Min-ho replied, not looking at the ring but scanning the perimeter of the parking lot. "The Han family respects wealth. They need to believe that I am so captivated by you that I would spend a fortune just to claim you. If the ring is small, they will think the marriage is small. Now smile. The paparazzi have been tipped off." Before Nia could process that, she heard the shutter clicks. A swarm of photographers, seemingly materializing from the bushes, began shouting their names. Min-ho's arms snake around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard side. The moment they touched, his demeanor shifted. The cold CEO vanished, replaced by a protective, doting lover. He brushed a stray curl from her forehead, his touch lingering just long enough for the cameras to catch it. "Show time, Mrs. Kang," he murmured against her ear, his breath warm. Nia looked up at him, and for a split second she forgot it was a lie. She beamed, radiating the joy of a woman who had just married her soulmate. They walked to the waiting armored SUV in a bubble of camera flashes. The ride to Min-ho's penthouse was silent. The windows were tinted black, sealing them off from the world. Nia twisted the ring on her finger, the adrenaline fatting into a cold knot of anxiety. "So, what now?" she asked, breaking the silence. Min-ho didn't look up from his tablet. "Now, you move in. My team has already cleared out your apartment in North Hollywood. Anything you left behind has been put in storage. You live at the Sky Tower now." "You cleared my apartment," Nia bristled, her independence flaring up, "without me being there." "I couldn't risk you being seen in that neighborhood again," Min-ho said calmly. "You are the wife of the head of 7 Star's American division. You are a target. If the Han family decides to leverage you to get to me, a lock on a studio apartment door won't stop them." He finally looked at her, his eyes dark and serious. "You need to understand something, Nia. We didn't just annoy a business rival today. We humiliated them. Han Jae-yoon was promised to me since she was 10. By marrying you, I have insulted her father's honor. In our world, blood is usually the only way to wash off an insult." Nia swallowed hard, the reality of the romantic thriller sinking in. "So, I'm basically a human shield." "You are the queen piece on the board," Min-ho corrected. "Powerful but constantly under attack. Your job is to stay on the board." The penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the entire Los Angeles basin. It was beautiful, sterile, and cold. Min-ho led her into a living room that was larger than her entire previous building. Waiting for them was Mr. Park, the advisor she had seen briefly the night before. He looked pale. "Chairman Kang is on the secure line," Park said, his voice trembling slightly. "He saw the photos. The news is trending in Seoul. The secret American love of Kang Min-ho. The Han family has already called him. They are threatening to sink the cargo ships in Incheon." Min-ho tightened his jaw. "Put him on." A massive screen on the wall flickered to life. Chairman Kang sat in his office in Seoul, the darkness of the night behind him. He looked like an older, more weathered version of Min-ho, but with eyes that burned with unchecked rage. He didn't yell. He spoke with a quiet, terrifying precision. "You ungrateful child," the chairman said in Korean. Min-ho replied in English, forcing the conversation into Nia's language. "Speak English, father. My wife is present." The chairman's eyes snapped to Nia, who was standing slightly behind Min-ho. She felt like a deer in headlights, but she remembered her contract. She stepped forward, linking her arm through Min-ho's, resting her head on his shoulder. She looked at the screen with a mixture of respect and defiance. "Who is this woman?" the chairman spat. "This is Nia," Min-ho said, his voice steady. "The woman I love, the reason I could not marry Jae-yoon. I tried to do my duty, father, but I couldn't sacrifice my happiness, not for a merger." The lie hung in the air. The chairman studied Nia through the pixelated screen. He was looking for cracks. Nia squeezed Min-ho's arm, looking lovingly at him, then turned her gaze to the camera. "It's an honor to meet you, Chairman," she said, her voice steady, utilizing her best posh accent training. "I know this is sudden, but we couldn't wait any longer." The chairman laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "Love? You think love pays the bills, Min-ho? You think love stops bullets?" He leaned into the camera. "Very well, you are married. The contract with the Han family is void, but you have started a war. If this is a trick, if this woman is just an actress you hired to wiggle out of your duty, I will expose her, and then I will hand her over to the Han family myself as a peace offering." Nia felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "There is a gala tomorrow night at the Disney Concert Hall," the chairman continued. "The Han family representative, Han Kyu, will be there. He runs the West Coast drug trade. He will want to meet the woman who stole his niece's husband. Bring her. If she falters, if she shows fear, you are both dead." The screen went black. Min-ho exhaled, a long breath he seemed to have been holding for minutes. He pulled away from Nia, walking to the wet bar to pour a drink. His hands were shaking just slightly. "Han Kyu," Min-ho muttered. "Of all the people they sent Kyu." "Who is Han Kyu?" Nia asked, her voice small. Min-ho turned, handing her a glass of water. "He is known as the Butcher in Busan. He doesn't do business, he does violence. He is in L.A." Min-ho walked over to her, his expression intense. "Tomorrow night you have to give the performance of your life, Nia. Kyu will try to scare you. He will try to break you. If he senses you are lying, he will take it as permission to strike." "I'm an actress, Min-ho," Nia said, trying to summon the courage she displayed at the club. "I deal with difficult directors." "This isn't a director," Min-ho said, stepping closer, looming over her. "This is a man who cuts off fingers for insults. You need to know everything about me. My favorite color, the name of my first dog, how I take my coffee, where we met. We have 24 hours to build a fake history that can withstand an interrogation." He grabbed a remote and dimmed the lights, the LA skyline glowing behind him. "Sit down, Nia. Class is in session, and for your sake I hope you're a quick study." Nia sat on the plush leather sofa, the diamond weighing down her hand, looking at the man who was now her husband. He was terrifying, yes, but as he rolled up his sleeves, exposing forearms corded with muscle and a tattoo of a 7-pointed star on his wrist, she realized he was also the only thing standing between her and the butcher. "Okay," Nia said, taking a sip of water and crossing her legs. "Tell me, darling, where did we meet? And make it good. I don't do cliché." Min-ho looked at her and a ghost of a smirk touched his lips. "A library," he said. "We met reaching for the same book, Sun Tzu's The Art of War." "Too dry," Nia countered. "Make it a coffee shop. You spilled your latte on my script. You were arrogant, I was furious. Enemies to lovers, it sells better." Min-ho stared at her for a long moment, the tension in the room shifting from fear to something electric. "Fine," he agreed. "Coffee shop, but I didn't spill the coffee. You did." "Deal," Nia said. "Now what's your mother's name? And don't lie to me, Min-ho. If I'm going to die for this, I want the truth." Min-ho's face hardened, the playfulness vanishing. "My mother is dead, and that is the one thing you never mentioned to the Han family. Ever." Outside, the wind howled around the glass tower, and Nia realized the storm she had avoided in Seoul had found her in Lowe's Angels anyway. The dress was midnight blue velvet, hugging every curve of Nia's body before spilling out into a dramatic train that swept the floor like dark water. It was backless, exposing her skin to the cool air, and the slit up the left leg was high enough to be scandalous in any other setting, but perfect for a woman claiming to be the new queen of the underworld. In the foyer of the penthouse, Min-ho stood adjusting his cufflinks, but his hands stilled when she walked in. For a moment, the calculated indifference he wore like a second skin cracked. He didn't look at her like a boss inspecting an employee. He looked at her like a man struck by lightning. "Too much?" Nia asked, smoothing the fabric over her hips, her voice betraying a hint of nerves. Min-ho cleared his throat, stepping forward to offer his arm. "No," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "It's perfect. You look dangerous. Hankai won't know what hit him." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sleek device, a panic button disguised as a diamond brooch. He pinned it carefully to the strap of her dress. "If you are separated from me, press this. My security team will extract you within 60 seconds. Do not hesitate." The Walt Disney Concert Hall was a gleaming, majestic structure of curved steel, reflecting the flashbulbs of 100 paparazzi. The moment the limousine door opened, the noise was deafening. "Min-ho, Min-ho, who is she?" The questions were shouted like accusations. Nia took a deep breath, pasted a radiant, adoring smile on her face, and stepped out. She clung to Min-ho's arm, not out of affection, but because her legs felt like jelly. "Eyes on me," Min-ho whispered, leaning down to kiss her cheek for the cameras. "You are the only thing in the world that matters right now. Sell it." Nia looked up at him, fluttering her lashes. "I adore you, darling," she said loud enough for the press to hear, her voice dripping with honey. The cameras went wild. They walked the red carpet, a united front of beauty and power, moving toward the Shark Tank awaiting them inside. The gala was a sea of tuxedos and ball gowns, a gathering of Los Angeles elite mixed with the dangerous foreign money that fueled the city's darker engines. Waiters moved with silent efficiency, offering champagne to senators and warlords alike. Min-ho navigated the room with the ease of a shark in open water, introducing Nia to key players, but his eyes were constantly scanning the perimeter. "He's here," Min-ho murmured, his grip on her waist tightening almost imperceptibly. Nia followed his gaze to the far balcony. Standing there, looking down at the crowd with an air of bored detachment, was a man who could only be Hankai. He wasn't large, but he possessed a stillness that was terrifying. He wore a white suit, standing out against the black-tie crowd, and he was watching them. As they ascended the stairs to the VIP level, Nia felt the air grow thinner. Hankai turned to face them, a smile stretching across his face that didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were black voids, devoid of empathy. "Kang Min-ho," Caillou said, his voice smooth and cultured, lacking the rough edge of the lower-level enforcers. "And the mystery bride, you have caused quite a stir in Seoul, my friend. My niece has locked herself in her room for 2 days." Min-ho didn't flinch. "Jae-yoon is a sweet girl. She deserves a husband who loves her, not a business partner. I did her a favor." Caillou chuckled, a low sound. He turned his gaze to Nia. It felt like being scanned by an X-ray machine. "And you must be Nia, the actress. I looked up your filmography. Brief appearance in a crime procedural, a commercial for toothpaste. You have a diverse portfolio." It was a dig, a subtle way of calling her a nobody. Nia felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she remembered Min-ho's advice. Desperate people are the best actors. She laughed, a bright, confident sound that drew the eyes of nearby guests. "Oh, Mr. Han, you know how Hollywood is," she said, stepping closer to him, invading his personal space just enough to show she wasn't afraid. "One minute you're selling toothpaste, the next you're stealing the heart of the most eligible bachelor in Asia. It's all about the role you're born to play, and frankly, being Mrs. Kang is my favorite role yet." She reached out and adjusted the lapel of Caillou's white suit, a bold move that made Min-ho's bodyguards tense up. "White after Labor Day," she tutted playfully. "Bold choice. I like a man who breaks the rules. That's why I fell for Min-ho." Caillou stared at her, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. He hadn't expected her to touch him, let alone critique him. He looked at Min-ho. "She has spirit. I see why you kept her hidden." Caillou signaled a waiter for drinks. "But spirit can be dangerous, Min-ho. It breaks easily." He handed a glass of champagne to Nia. "Tell me, Nia, how did you meet? The tabloids are speculating wild things." "A coffee shop," Nia said instantly, leaning into Min-ho. "I was reading a script. He was on a call, being loud and obnoxious. I told him to shut up. He spilled my latte. It was hate at first sight." "Hate," Caillou mused. A thin line between hate and love. Very thin, Nia agreed, her eyes locking with Kaiu's. Just like the line between genius and madness, or business and war. The tension at the table was thick enough to choke on. Kaiu took a slow sip of his drink. War is messy, Mrs. Kang. It ruins beautiful things like dresses or faces. The threat was direct. Min-ho stepped forward, shielding Nia with his shoulder. We aren't here to discuss war, Kaiu. We are here to celebrate the arts, unless you intend to make a scene in front of the senator. Min-ho nodded toward a U.S. senator standing 10 feet away. Kaiu's eyes flickered to the politician. He knew he couldn't act here, not tonight. Of course not, Kaiu said, bowing slightly. Enjoy the evening. The orchestra is playing Mahler. It's a tragedy, very fitting. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Min-ho let out a breath, his hand finding the small of Nia's back. You were incredible, he whispered, his voice laced with genuine awe. You didn't just stand your ground, you pushed back. I was terrified, Nia admitted through her smiling teeth. My knees are shaking. I've got you, Min-ho said. And for the first time, Nia felt that he meant it not as a contractual obligation, but as a promise. The orchestra began to play a waltz. Dance with me, Min-ho said, pulling her onto the floor. We need to look unbothered. They moved together in the center of the room, the world blurring into a swirl of light and color. Nia looked up at Min-ho. Up close, the harsh lines of his face softened. He wasn't the monster the stories made him out to be. He was a man carrying the weight of a dynasty on his shoulders. Did I pass? She asked softly. You didn't just pass. You bought us time, Min-ho replied. His hand slid up her back, sending shivers through her. But Kaiu isn't done. The comment about the tragedy, he's planning something. Tonight. No, he's a hunter. He likes to play with his food. He'll wait until we feel safe. Min-ho looked deep into her eyes. I won't let him hurt you, Nia. I dragged you into this. I will get you out. I signed the contract, Min-ho, she said, surprising herself. I'm in this. We finished the scene. Min-ho stared at her, and in the middle of the crowded ballroom, the air shifted. The distance between them, usually defined by money and lies, vanished. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. Then hold on tight, Mrs. Kang. The curtain hasn't fallen yet. They left the gala an hour later, exiting through the VIP back entrance to avoid the paparazzi swarm. The cool night air was a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. The valet brought Min-ho's armored sedan around. Min-ho opened the door for her, but as Nia bent to get in, she froze. On the driver's seat, there was a single red rose, and pinned to it with a jagged knife was a photo. Nia reached for it before Min-ho could stop her. It was a photo of her, not from the gala and not from her acting headshots. It was a grainy photo taken through a window, the window of the Sky Tower penthouse. It had been taken this morning. Min-ho snatched the photo from her hand, his face turning pale with rage. He scanned the surrounding rooftops, his body coiling like a spring. He was watching us, Nia whispered, the glamour of the night shattering instantly. He was inside the apartment. No, Min-ho said, his voice deadly calm, taken from a drone or a long-range lens, but the message is clear. He crumpled the photo in his fist and looked at the knife left on the leather seat. He knows where we sleep. Min-ho shoved Nia into the car and slammed the door, jumping into the driver's seat. Buckle up, he commanded, firing the engine. We aren't going back to the penthouse. Where are we going? Nia asked, her hands trembling as she clutched the velvet of her dress. Min-ho peeled out of the lot, tires screeching. A safe house. The script just changed, Nia. We're off book now. As they sped into the Lowe's Angels night, Nia looked in the side mirror and saw a black SUV pull out of the shadows, following them. The chase was on. The speedometer hit 110 as Min-ho weaved the armored sedan through the late-night traffic of the 101 freeway, the engine roaring like a wounded beast. Behind them, the black SUV was relentless, matching their speed, its headlights blinding in the rearview mirror. Nia gripped the dashboard, her knuckles white, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. They're gaining on us, she shouted, watching the distance close. Get down. Min-ho roared, his hand shooting out to push her head toward her knees. A split second later, the rear window erupted into a spiderweb of cracks as a bullet slammed into the bulletproof glass. The impact sounded like a sledgehammer. Hold on, Min-ho gritted out. He jerked the steering wheel hard to the right, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic. Horns blared and tires screeched as other cars swerved to avoid them. Min-ho took the exit ramp at a dangerous speed, the car drifting sideways, burning rubber, before correcting and shooting down the surface streets toward the industrial district. Who are they? Nia gasped, trembling as she peeked over the dashboard. Han Kaiu's cleanup crew, Min-ho replied, his eyes scanning the road for an ambush. He doesn't want to negotiate anymore. He wants to erase the insult. Min-ho hit the brakes hard, spinning the car into a narrow alleyway between 2 warehouses. He killed the lights immediately. Stay down. Don't breathe. The black SUV roared past the alley entrance, missing them by seconds. They waited in the suffocating darkness for 2 minutes, the only sound the ticking of the cooling engine and their own ragged breathing. Min-ho finally exhaled, turning to look at Nia. In the shadows, his eyes were wild, fueled by adrenaline. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice urgent, his hands checking her arms and face for glass or injury. I'm okay, Nia whispered, her voice shaking. Just get us out of here. They drove in silence for another hour, taking a winding route into the Santa Monica Mountains, far away from the city lights. Min-ho pulled up a long, gravel driveway to a secluded mid-century modern house perched on the edge of a cliff. It looked abandoned, covered in dust sheets, but it was a fortress. Min-ho ushered her inside, locking the heavy steel door behind them and punching a code into a security panel. The lights flickered on, revealing a space that was frozen in time. My safe house, Min-ho explained, tossing his keys on a dusty table. No digital footprint, no Wi-Fi. No one knows about this place except me. He walked over to the window, peering out through the blinds, his gun still in his hand. Nia slumped onto a covered sofa, the adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. She looked at the man standing by the window, the suit, the gun, the burden he carried. The reality of her situation washed over her. She wasn't acting anymore. There was no director to yell cut. Min-ho, she said softly. He didn't turn. Min-ho, look at me. He turned slowly, and she saw the exhaustion etched into his features. I need you to listen to me, he said, his voice low. In the morning, a helicopter will land on the helipad down the canyon. It will take you to a private airfield in Nevada. From there, a jet will take you to Switzerland. You'll have a new identity, and the money will be wired to an offshore account. Nia stood up, confused. What are you talking about? I'm tearing up the contract, Min-ho said, walking toward her. This has gone too far. I hired you to be a distraction, not a casualty. Han Kaiu won't stop until one of us is dead. I can't let that be you. So you're just going to send me away? Nia asked, anger rising in her chest. And what happens to you? I stay, Min-ho said simply. I finish this. If I run, they will hunt me forever. And if you are with me, they will use you to break me. You have to go, Nia. It's the only way you survive. Nia looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. And in that moment, the $500,000 didn't matter. The movie roles didn't matter. She crossed the room and stood right in front of him, invading his space. No, she said firmly. Min-ho blinked. Excuse me. I said no. I'm not getting on that helicopter, Nia declared, her voice steady. I don't break contracts, Min-ho, and I don't run away when things get hard. That's why I'm a good actress. I commit to the role. This isn't a role, Min-ho shouted, grabbing her shoulders. This is your life. Exactly, Nia shouted back. And for the last 2 days, you have been the only real thing in it. If I leave, they'll kill you. You know that. You need me. You need the facade to keep the Han family confused long enough to strike back. Min-ho stared at her, his resistance crumbling under her fierce gaze. The air between them crackled with electricity. The fear and danger had stripped away the pretense, leaving only raw emotion. You are foolish, Min-ho whispered, but his hands on her shoulders softened, his thumbs tracing her collarbone. I'm committed, Nia corrected. She reached up, her hand cupping his jaw, feeling the tension in his muscle. Besides, you owe me $1 million. I'm not leaving without my check. Min-ho let out a short, incredulous laugh. Then he looked at her lips. The distance closed in an instant. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, fueled by the brush with death and the terrifying realization that they had something to lose. Min-ho kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. Nia wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, anchoring him. For tonight, they weren't a mafia boss and a struggling actress. They were just two people trying to keep the darkness at bay. The morning light filtered through the dusty blinds, waking Nia. She was in the master bedroom, tangled in the sheets. She reached out, but the other side of the bed was cold. Panic flared in her chest. She threw on Min-ho's discarded dress shirt and ran into the living room. Min-ho was there, sitting at the dining table. He had disassembled his handgun and was cleaning it with methodical precision. He looked up as she entered, and his expression was different. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. "Good morning," he said. There was coffee waiting for her. "You didn't leave," Nia said, exhaling in relief. "I considered it," Min-ho admitted. "But you were right. I can't win this by hiding, and I can't win without you." He slid the reassembled gun into his holster. "I made a call to my father. I told him we are coming to him." "To Seoul?" Nia asked, eyes widening. "No, to the port," Min-ho said, standing up. "Han Kyu has a shipment leaving the port of Los Angeles tonight. A massive shipment of illegal tech components. It's his leverage, his money maker. If I take it from him, I break his power in the West. He will be forced to meet me." "That sounds like a suicide mission," Nia said, crossing her arms. "It is," Min-ho agreed, "unless we change the narrative." He walked over to her, buttoning his cuffs. "Kyu thinks we are running. He thinks we are terrified. We need to show him that we are not. We need to show him that the actress is actually the mastermind." Nia raised an eyebrow. "Me, the mastermind?" "Kyu underestimates you," Min-ho said, a dangerous glint in his eye. "He thinks you are a prop. But what if you were the one pulling the strings? What if the foreign wife was actually a strategy to lure him out?" Min-ho handed her a phone. "I need you to make a call to the press. We are going to announce a press conference at the port. We are going to make so much noise that Kyu can't touch us without the whole world watching." Nia took the phone, weighing it in her hand. This was it, the performance of a lifetime. "What's the script?" she asked, a slow smile spreading across her face. Min-ho grinned, a predatory smile that matched hers. "We're going to rewrite the ending, Mrs. Kang. Tell them we have an announcement regarding the merger. Tell them we're ready to talk." Nia dialed the number for the biggest news outlet in LA. As it rang, she looked at Min-ho. They were standing on the edge of a cliff about to jump, but this time they were jumping together. "Hello?" Nia said into the phone, her voice transforming into the smooth, commanding tone of a powerful CEO's wife. "This is Nia Kang. Get your cameras ready. We have a story for you." The port of Los Angeles was a labyrinth of steel containers stacked like skyscrapers against the night sky, bathed in the harsh, industrial glow of floodlights. The air tasted of salt and diesel. A makeshift stage had been erected near Pier 40, surrounded by a swarm of press vans and journalists who had gathered like sharks sensing blood. They were promised the scoop of the century regarding the Kang-Han merger, but Min-ho had prepared a different kind of show. Nia stood behind the podium, the wind whipping her hair. She wasn't wearing the soft, innocent dress of a bride anymore. She wore a sharp, white tailored suit that glowed in the spotlights, looking every inch the imperious queen of an empire. Min-ho stood just behind her, his presence a silent, looming threat to anyone who dared approach. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nia's voice rang out, amplified by the microphone, steady and commanding. "Thank you for coming. There have been rumors circulating about the stability of the Seven Stars Corporation and our relationship with the Han family. We are here to set the record straight." As she spoke, black sedans screeched to a halt at the perimeter. Han Kyu burst out of the lead car, followed by his men. He looked disheveled, his composure shattered by the audacity of the public spectacle. He marched toward the stage, ignoring the clicking cameras. "This is a farce," Caillou shouted, his voice cutting through the wind. "Shut it down, Min-ho. You think these cameras will protect you?" Min-ho moved to step forward, his hand drifting to his jacket, but Nia held up a hand, stopping him. She turned her gaze to Caillou, her expression one of pity, not fear. "Mr. Han," she said into the microphone, broadcasting his interruption to the world. "We were just discussing your contribution to the industry." She stepped off the podium and walked toward him, the cameras pivoting to follow her. It was the boldest improvisation of her life. She stopped 3 feet from the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. "You see," Nia said, lowering her voice so only Caillou and the nearest cameras could hear, "Min-ho plays chess, I play poker, and you just went all in on a bluff." Caillou sneered, his hand twitching near his waist. "You act like you have power, little girl. You are nothing but a paid distraction." "Am I?" Nia smiled, cold and sharp. "While you were chasing us through the city trying to kill a newlywed couple, my husband's team was busy. They weren't seizing your cargo, Caillou. They were auditing it." Caillou's face drained of color. "What?" Nia gestured to the massive container ship looming behind them. "We found the weapons hidden inside the electronics shipment. Illegal, unregistered, and a direct violation of the trade agreements your family signed. And because we are upstanding citizens." She paused for effect, looking directly into the lens of a news camera. "We called the FBI. They are opening container 4B right now." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder by the second. Red and blue lights began to flash against the steel containers. Caillou looked around wildly. He was trapped. If he drew his weapon now, he would be gunned down by police or caught on live TV. If he ran, he admitted guilt. Nia leaned in close. "The chairman has been watching the live stream, Caillou. He sees a man who let his operation get exposed by an actress. You're done." Caillou let out a guttural growl and lunged for Nia, his fingers reaching for her throat. "I will kill you." Before he could touch her, Min-ho was there. He moved with brutal efficiency, sweeping Caillou's legs out from under him and pinning him to the concrete. Min-ho leaned down, his voice a low growl in Caillou's ear. "I told you, she is my wife, and you do not touch what is mine." The police swarmed the pier. The flashbulbs were blinding. Nia stood back, watching as Caillou was handcuffed and dragged away, shouting curses. It was chaos, but in the center of it, Min-ho stood up, adjusted his suit, and looked at her. The world seemed to fall away. The noise of the reporters shouting questions faded into a dull roar. Min-ho walked over to her, ignoring the FBI agents signaling him. He stopped in front of her, his eyes searching her face. "That was," Min-ho started, searching for the word. "Academy Award-winning," Nia suggested, her voice trembling slightly now that the danger had passed. "Breathtaking," Min-ho corrected. He took her hand, kissing the knuckles. "Let's go home, Nia. The show is over." 1 year later. The penthouse was quiet. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the room in the same bruised purple and orange hues as the night they met. Nia stood by the window, packing a suitcase. The contract was up. According to the document signed in the Smoky Club a year ago, today was the day she received her payment and walked away. A clean break. No divorce needed, just an annulment of a marriage based on a lie. She heard the door open. Min-ho walked in. He looked different than he had a year ago, less guarded, the lines of stress around his eyes softened. He was holding a sleek black envelope. He placed it on the marble island in the kitchen. "The transfer is complete," he said, his voice neutral. $1 million plus the bonus for the performance at the pier. The apartment in New York is in your name, as requested. Nia zipped up her suitcase. The sound was loud in the silence. She walked over to the island and looked at the envelope. It was everything she had ever wanted: financial freedom, a chance to produce her own art, a new life. "So this is it," she said, looking up at him. "This is the agreement," Min-ho replied. He was standing rigidly, his hands in his pockets. He wasn't looking at her, he was looking at the view. You held up your end of the bargain. You saved the company. You saved me. Nia picked up the envelope. She weighed it in her hand. Then she looked at the contract lying next to it. You know, she said softly, I've been reading a lot of scripts lately, and I realized something about the good ones. Min-ho finally turned to look at her. And what is that? The characters have to grow, she said, walking around the island toward him. If they end up exactly where they started, it's a tragedy. She stood in front of him, the envelope between them. I don't want to be a tragedy, Min-ho, and I don't want to be an actress anymore. At least not with you. Min-ho's breath hitched. Nia, you have a life waiting for you. A real one, not this dangerous world I live in. My life is boring without you, she admitted. She took the envelope and tossed it onto the floor. I don't want the money. I want a renegotiation. Min-ho looked at the discarded envelope, then back at her, hope flaring in his dark eyes. What are your terms? Nia reached up and undid his tie, her movements slow and deliberate. No more contracts, no more deadlines, no more pretending. She rested her hands on his chest, feeling his heart beating as fast as hers. I want the role of the wife, but for real this time, until death do us part. Min-ho didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against him, burying his face in her neck. It's a dangerous role, he murmured against her skin. There are no retakes. I know, Nia whispered, closing her eyes and breathing in his scent. But I think I've finally found the right co-star. Min-ho pulled back, cupped her face, and kissed her. Not for the cameras, not for his father, and not for survival. He kissed her because he loved her. Outside, the lights of Los Angeles shimmered, a city of a million fake stories, but high above in the glass tower, one of them had finally become true. You're hired, Min-ho said against her lips. Nia laughed, a sound of pure joy. Shut up and kiss me, boss.